everyone, Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel, and welcome to Mystical Munchies featuring the Unofficial Harry Potter Cookbook. This week we're starting off with the appetizer, Irish soda bread. This is another recipe that's got stories and a historical note in this case, so let's take a look at this one. Hold on a second, I just realized that... Okay. Let me put my phone on Do Not Disturb. And we'll come back to the recipe. Mrs. Weasley always seemed prepared when it comes to food. Harry can burst in on her in the middle of the night and she'll still be able to serve him a nice meal. Fresh bread is part of it when Dumbledore brings Harry to the Burrow after taking him to Professor Slughorn's. See Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, Chapter 5. And the historical note, the Irish weren't very much into yeast breads. Inadequate cooking utensils were the culprit. So they must have been very happy when baking soda arrived on the scene. They could quickly and easily make bread with it. And that's what they've been doing since the late 1800s. This is the bread to serve with soups and stews, and it makes awesome toast. Admittedly, I made a lot of bread when I was a kid, because when we were growing up, I always used to be the bread master. We'd have this bread machine that I'd make a loaf of bread with at least once a week. The recipes I used always used yeast. So, yeah. So admittedly, I'm used to doing bread with yeast in it. This will be a new experience for me, doing a loaf of bread without yeast. But let's see how it goes. The ingredients are waiting for us at the table, so let's move in that direction. You'll almost certainly hear the oven chirping in the background at some point. I've actually got it up to 425 and I'm cooking the chicken as I normally do on Saturdays during Mystical Munchies. Anyway, to make this recipe, we need 4 cups of all-purpose flour and we'll need more for dusting. We need 1.5 teaspoons each of baking soda and cream of tartar. We also need 1 teaspoon of salt, 3 tablespoons of granulated sugar, half a stick, 4 tablespoons of butter, a large egg that I've beaten, and 1.5 cups of buttermilk. Now let's move into the kitchen and start putting this recipe together. The actual first step of the recipe the actual rest of the part of the first step of the recipe is to grease and flour a 9-inch round baking dish. I've got that ready. I've got the baking dish ready, but I'm not going to grease or flour it yet. I'm going to wait until I'm actually ready to put the bread mix in the pan and then put that in the oven. So we're going to start off with our large mixing bowl. We're going to start off by whisking the flour, which I've got off shot here, and of course we need 4 cups of that. So I'm going to move that closer to the sink. I'm going to do all the pouring with the flour off camera. Let's see, that's 2 cups. And then we need another 2. There's a bit of a clump here at the bottom of this canister that I need to break up here. And I've been watching a lot of old Forged in Fire clips on YouTube as well, so I've got to get used to canister being like a baking canister where you keep baking ingredients in, not something like a canister Damascus. Anyway, mild ramble aside, I'm also going to pour in more flour into my canister, into my baking ingredient canister, because I know I'll need more flour for dusting and to make a work surface a little bit later. So I'm just going to take care of that real quick. That can go back up. Assuming I can put that up without putting everything else down on the floor. Thankfully I was able to do that so we can get the flour out of the way for the time being. We also need the baking soda, which I've got right here. We need a teaspoon and a half of that, I believe. Yes. A teaspoon and a half. baking soda can go back up. Then we need the cream of tartar, which I don't know why finding this was so difficult at the grocery store this morning, but I was able to locate it. We'll of course pull the freshness seal off. Whoop, come on. There we are. Whoop. In the garbage with the freshness seal. There we are. And of course my teaspoon doesn't fit. Fortunately, I've got a workaround. I can count to 3. So 1, 2, 3. That was my half teaspoon measuring measuring spoon I was using, by the way. The cream of tartar can go back up as well. Then we want the teaspoon of salt. That's a little bit more than a teaspoon, but we'll work with it. And 3 tablespoons of our granulated sugar. One, 2, 3. That can move toward the dishes. The sugar can go back up. And I think that's the last thing we need. Yep. That's the last thing we need before we start whisking it together. Okay. The next thing we want is the butter until it gets completely rubbed in. Now, as you can probably guess, due to the sheer amount of the flour that we've got, the mixture is still going to be quite floury. I'll get the whisk out. So we'll just rub that in. This is probably not exactly how you're supposed to rub it in, but this is how I'm going to do it. Just breaking up the butter a little bit. There we go. Come on. Get another piece of butter in. And I am using salted butter in this case since that was the only butter that I had handy. I was a bit of a derp this morning and forgot to put unsalted butter on the grocery list. So since I happen to have salted butter around, that's what I'm using. And there's all the butter rubbed in. So I will give my hands a quick wash before we move to the next part of this. Alright, then we're going to grab a wooden spoon, which I've got right here. The paper towel and the butter wrapper can hit the bin. At this point, we want to stir in the egg and buttermilk until the dough begins to form. So I've got the egg right here. And a cup and a half of buttermilk. Buttermilk is right here. Now I'm going to do this pour at the sink as well. There we go. Grab another spatula. There we are. I'll put the buttermilk back in the fridge. There we go. And now we use the wooden spoon to start stirring all of that together. And we want that to be until the dough begins to form. So we'll give that a stir. Okay. We actually do have a bit of a dough starting to come together here, as you can probably tell by my starting to encounter some resistance. Just scraping this down as best I can. And I'm going to scrape the sides as well to get as much of the mix in as I can. Okay. We'll scrape that down. Dough's beginning to come together. So we are going to come back. So I'm going to shut the camera off and we'll come back to a flour dusted work surface. Here's our flour dusted work surface. Now I'm going to turn the dough out onto said work surface. Oops, easy does it. And then I'm going to knead the dough until it starts. I'm going to knead it until it just comes together. Let's see if I can turn this. There we go. That's actually not bad for the dough coming together. So while I give my hands a quick wash, let's see what the next step is going to need to be on this. Okay, so now we want to form the dough into a round and dust the top with the extra flour. So now I think we want to start getting the pan ready to go. And I'm going to leave everything here. So now I want to take our pan. So now I'm going to take the pan and now we're going to grease and flour this thing. So I'm going to spray it with cooking spray. And dust a little bit of flour in here. Apparently I'm also going to start coughing from cooking spray fumes. Not the first time I've done that here on Mystical Munchies, and it probably won't be the last either. Just making sure I get the sides floured well here too. Okay. Maybe a little bit more flour than I was expecting to need, but it'll work. Actually, I should be able to shake some of the excess out here. So we've got our pan floured. We'll bring the camera over to our floured pan so I can turn the dough that we were preparing into it. There we are. And then I'll just frame that to the, and then I'll frame that to the pan. Okay. There we go. Now at this point, we want to dust the top with a little extra flour. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. Okay. So there's all of that. Give my hands a quick wash, as we're also going to score it with an X about a ½ inch deep in the dough. So we'll grab, I don't want a serrated knife for this. That's still serrated, so I'm going to move the camera back just a bit. This is the knife I want. So I'm going to go about ½ an inch deep. I think we'll do something like that. Okay. And then at recipe as written, they want you to put this in for 15 minutes at 425, then reduce to 350, and bake it at for another 40 minutes until the bottom's dark golden brown. But instead, I'm going to leave the oven at 425, and I'm going to bake this for 50 minutes. Just a little less than an hour. It should give me the same result either way. So I'm going to put this in, preferably without burning my hand, but we managed that. Set a kitchen timer for 50 minutes, and we will come back. We'll come back after that's had some time to cool on a wire rack. Here's our first look at the Irish soda bread as it's coming out of as it's had some time to cool. And I did a product unboxing in the meantime. So I'm going to cut this up, hope everything holds together, and then I'll meet you guys over at my desk for the taste test. I've got some of the bread right here. I debated putting something on it, like peanut butter or jam or something like that, but I decided not to because I wanted to focus initially on the consistency of the bread, and somewhat to my surprise, everything is holding together pretty well. So let's give this a try and see what I think of it. I did cut it into eighths, and I'm going to pull up, actually I'm going to grab my summer content sheet so I know what I'm making next. But let's give this a taste and see what I think. Actually, it's not bad, actually. It's maybe a smidge on the salty side, because I used a little bit more salt than the recipe called for. But, yeah, overall I'd say it's a pretty respectable recipe. An overall pretty respectable bread effort. I think I'd probably have preferred, in hindsight, to maybe use a rectangular pan as normal, since it's not going to be easy to put this into something like a sandwich with the round shape that the recipe calls for. But all in all, taste-wise, it's a very serviceable bread recipe. That's another episode of Mystical Munchies in the books. Next week, we're going to be making the side hot rolls. And as I've got a lot of game videos, I've still got a couple of game videos coming up today. I'm not going to plug anything just yet. Well, I'll plug the scheduled stuff. So tomorrow morning, we're going to be starting New Game November with Stalingrad Advance to the Volga by Revolution Games. Wednesday, New Game November will continue as we play American Tank Ace by Compass Games. Thank you for watching the video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to turn on notifications so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, take care everyone.
Thank you.